Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Triangle Be Well. My name is Howard Jacobson. I am the founder of Triangle Be Well, and I'm joined in the studio. I'm joining him. It's his studio. Our producer, Amnon Nissan. Hello, Amnon.
Hello, Howard. Now, for the next hour, it's your.
It's my studio.
Yep.
Ooh, there's a lot of expensive toys here. Too bad I can't take them home. Well, I would. I
Happy
would.
New Year.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
It is my second New Year in 3 months. So
Yeah, that's nice, isn't it?
keep them coming. Just
Yeah.
keep renewing, keep refreshing. So, if you have a question about today's topic or anything related to health, wellness, and specifically, I love talking about habits, behavior change. Most of us kind of know what to do. This is not secret stuff, how to get healthy, how to live a healthy lifestyle. Once we're in the mess, once we've got some conditions or diseases, then it gets awfully tricky with medications, with procedures, with drug protocols, and how to get off them and how to reverse things. But most of us know what we need to do around health and lifestyle. So if you have questions around that, you're struggling. This is, as Amnon mentioned, the new year. So a lot of people have made their New Year's resolutions. I'm not sure about the quality of the data or where it comes from, but I've certainly seen a lot of data that says that most Americans don't manage to keep their New Year's resolutions. I've heard January 17th as the average day at which they're given up. So if you have made a resolution and you want better odds to keep it, give us a call. You can call in at 919-518-9773. You can also Skype computers 2K voice. That's 2K, like the number two, the letter K, computers 2K voice on Skype. Before we get started, a couple of quick announcements. Got some events coming up if you live in the Triangle region of North Carolina. First one is a Triangle Be Well intro dinner. That's on Monday, July. I'm wishing it was beach time. Monday, January 11th. It's a week from today at 6:30 in the evening in Durham. And if you go to trianglebewell.com and you click the events link at the top left, you can find out more about that and register. The event is free. That's right. I feed you for free. That's that's how much I think nobody wants to listen to my advice about health, is that I pay you to come and I give you food so that you come and we talk about it. But seriously, it's a really important conversation about how to be well, about how to navigate the medical system so that you can achieve actual wellness and not just medical management of disease. So I'll be sharing the latest scientific findings on the links between diet, disease, nutrition, wellness, plus I feed you. And part of the reason I feed you is so you can get a taste, get an experience of how good and filling and comforting really healthy food can be. Now, I say it's free, it is, but when you register, you have to put down a $10 deposit. That's so people don't take up the space and then not show up. So as soon as you show up, I void out your payment and it's free. If you don't show up and you don't let me know 24 hours in advance, that's kind of unfair to me for having to make all the food and for other people who didn't get to sign up because you took their spot. So that's why I'm being a little bit of a meanie about that. But register, RSVP, pay, get refunded, enjoy a delicious dinner, and get life-saving information for yourself and your family. Again, at trianglebewell.com/events, or just click the events link at the top left, and you can sign up for that. Second event, which you can also find on that same web page, is a really fun thing. There will be delicious food. It is called Eating Healthy for the New Year, and I'm joined by my friend Lee Newland, who is a fantastic cook. She's also a proprietor with her husband Larry of Peaceful River Farm in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and they grow the most amazing organic produce. They deliver to restaurants. If you've ever eaten a meal at a sort of five-star Triangle restaurant, one of these farms to forks places, you've eaten their food. They are single-handedly responsible for the huge upsurge in orders of broccoli leaves. Lee has cooked with broccoli leaves for many years, believes they are the most nutritious part of the plant, the most delicious, the most useful, even better than the florets. and it was killing her that people would come to the farm and they would complain about the leaves. Couldn't you pick them off? So she started packaging them, selling them to restaurants, to chefs. So they're real big movers and shakers in the farm to fork, fork to farm movement, the slow eating, the grow local, the organic food movement. And she is a cancer survivor for 10 years and did it through diet, through lifestyle, through food, through nutrition. And she has a series of cooking classes throughout the year. And she has invited me to join with her. And so we're sponsoring a 2-hour class, Eating Healthy for the New Year. You'll get tips and tricks. You'll understand the relationship between diet and disease. And most importantly, you're going to taste delicious food that's going to be made in front of you, demo style. So you will go home with the tools, the knowledge to make these delicious meals really quickly, simply, and easily. There are also going to be farm boxes available for you to pick up and take home. You can actually pick up the food that will been picked fresh that day, take it home, take home the recipe sheets, and turn the year around. That's on January 16th. All right, so today I want to talk about hypertension, high blood pressure. And the reason I want to talk about hypertension is I'm working on a chapter in a book with a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, actually. It's basically, he had this idea of a book called How to Get Cheap Meds, How to Save Money on Your Prescriptions. And he's a medical doctor. I have to talk to him first to find out if he wants his name publicly revealed. We haven't signed anything yet, so I just got to check with him. But he's a researcher at a very prestigious medical research and practice clinical institution in the United States. And we started talking, and we decided it'd be kind of fun to have me contribute to the book. In every chapter, something about, well, how to save money on your meds by not needing them anymore. How about that for a concept? That, yeah, you can get generics and you can use Canadian pharmacies and you can buy larger volumes and cut them in half and all the tricks he's going to teach you, but you could also improve your diet, improve your lifestyle, improve your mindset, and get off the drugs in the first place, so you don't even have to worry about the copays. So you don't even have to worry about carrying this stuff around with you, and you don't have to worry about the ever-present side effects. No matter what the drug is, there are side effects. My author on Whole and the Low-Carb Fraud, T. Colin Campbell, is fond of saying there's no such thing as side effects. There's just effects. And when you take any pharmaceutical agent, you're taking something that was not found in nature, that's been created in a lab, it's been synthesized, or it's something that was originally found in nature and has been compressed to the point where the active ingredient is so many times higher than you can ever find in the natural world, and you put that in your body, guess what your body thinks it is? A toxin. It's a poison, and your body will always do what it can to react to get rid of that poison. And one of the ways our body tries to get rid of poison is by letting us know we've been poisoned. So maybe, so many drugs have side effects that involve nausea and vomiting. Well, that's because they're trying, the body goes, what is this stuff? Get it out. Ugh. Right? So we take these pills in, and we know they have certain effects, and some of them have very, very specific effects on particular neurotransmitter channels or particular types, classes of angiotensin proteins. And so that, we think that what we want to do in pharmacology and Western medicine is get as close as possible to a specific silver bullet for a specific ailment. So we're just going to attack that particular enzyme that is going to convert this to this, and we're going to stop it, and that's going to solve the problem. Never works out that way. There are always side effects. And you know this. If you've ever watched TV and you see a commercial for some incredible new drug, the world's best drug, what do they have to do for the last 30 seconds? Right? They get some speed reader. It's like someone who used to work at an auction. So side effects include, dry mouth, nausea, blindness, death. Right? They go through it as if it's nothing. Meanwhile, they still have pictures of happy couples frolicking in fields with golden retrievers. Right? So we all know the pictures are much more influential to us. We kind of gloss over, yeah, those side effects, but what are we going to do? We need the drugs. No, we don't. Most of the time, we don't need the drugs. And so that's what I'm writing about, is how to not need the drugs in the first place. So right now we're working on the hypertension chapter. So one of my challenges is it's very easy for my co-author to write a different piece for every chapter because there's different drugs, there's different things you need to consider. For me, one of the challenges is, well, all the chapters are kind of the same. If I'm telling people how to improve their diet to resolve or reverse or prevent hypertension, guess what? It's the same diet I'm going to suggest to reverse, prevent heart disease, diabetes. It's the best odds diet to prevent cancer or to put it into remission. It's the best odds diet for stroke. It's the best odds diet to manage autoimmune disease. It's the best odds diet for asthma, for skin conditions, for headaches, for eye problems, for kidney problems, for insomnia. It's the best diet for everything. So one of my challenges is to come up with different content for every single chapter. And here is my Aquarius patron saint. So if you're watching this, if you don't have a water bottle or a glass of water with you, you can push pause, go get yourself some water. We can be drinking buddies. I love these glasses. You know, it's got a good grip, so I'm less likely to drop it on my lap in my excitement. That would be a fun 45 minutes.
No, it won't.
But luckily there are things, there are natural foods that I would recommend specifically for specific conditions, and that's true of hypertension as well. But I'm going to start by talking about hypertension in general. And last week when we talked about diabetes, I went off on a long tangent about what is a disease. And we talked about certain clusters of symptoms are put together, and Western medicine decides, well, that's a disease. Now, hypertension is considered a disease in and of itself. It's actually a symptom, right? It's a biomarker. Hyper means high, elevated, too high, and tension is blood pressure. So that's actually something we can measure with I have trouble pronouncing sphygmometer. I've been practicing that with a cuff, the blood pressure cuff that goes on your arm. It gets inflated either manually with a squeeze bellows, or more typically now with a electrical pump, battery operated or plug-in, and it pumps up and it comes down, and then the sensors can measure your systolic and diastolic blood pressure. And if those numbers are elevated, considered too high to be normal, then you are hypertensive. So let's talk about what those numbers are and what they mean. So the heart, put your hand over your heart. You don't have to say the Pledge of Allegiance, but just feel the beat. Your heart beats and relaxes, beats and relaxes. The beat is called a systole. And so your systolic blood pressure, the higher number, the SBP, is the pressure when your heart is beating, when it's pumping blood out into the arteries. And that pressure travels pretty quickly throughout the entire body. At least in a healthy body, it's almost instantaneous. Imagine if you have a hose, a garden hose, it's full, but the spigot isn't on. The second you turn the spigot on at the house, water starts shooting out the hose because there's displacement of fluid. There's nowhere else for it to go but out. So even though the heart is beating here, they can get your blood pressure on your arm because the heart pumps and displaces the fluid, and that way you can measure blood pressure. You don't have to do it like sticking something into the heart or going right to the aorta. You can get it straight from the arm, which is a common, convenient place to draw it from. So that's systolic. Diastolic is the pressure when the heart isn't beating, when it's relaxing between beats. So as you can imagine, so again, imagine you turn on the spigot and the water's shooting out, then you turn it off. You turn it on, turn it off. The water still be moving when it's off, but more gently, more slowly, because of the constant pulse. So that's the second number, the lower number, the diastolic. So your blood pressure is two numbers, and the numbers are mg's or mm's of Hg, milliliters of mercury. So the blood pressure is measured the same way we would measure the weather, right? So your the air pressure. So if it's over 30, you've got a high pressure system. We do in the West, we do or in the United States, it's not on the metric system, but many places in the world, they don't talk about mercury in terms of 30, they talk about it in the metric, which would equate to how they talk about blood pressure. So it's still pressure, it's still physics, a physical measure of the pressure of the fluid inside the arteries and blood vessels and veins in your body. So normal blood pressure is considered, oh, you got one. You're like, this is like Home Shopping Network here. How much do we sell this for? How many do we have?
No, that's mine.
That's yours. Okay. So it goes up, so mm's of Hg calibrated. Home Sfig by Pine Mall. Very cool. So, and it's in Delta Force colors. Okay, so that's, I don't have to show it. And it's got, oh, this is so cool. You don't even need batteries to run it. So here it is. So we can use a little visual here if it's in the picture. The considered normal is 120 for the systolic, for the higher number, over 70, higher, for the diastolic or lower number, or 120, I guess 120 over 80, it's been raised. So anywhere between 120, below 120, 100, 120 is considered fine. There's some debate about what too low is, hypotensive. Whether people who are at 100 or 95 is considered too low. Typically, that will be based on symptoms. There are non-Western groups of people who eat a very, very clean diet, whose blood pressure is far lower than what most medical professionals here consider normal. But if you're fainting all the time, or you're dizzy, or you're sluggish, then and your blood pressure is 100 or 95, then that's probably too low for you. But we're talking here about too high. So if it's 120 or below, the systolic, that's considered normal. 80 or below is considered normal for the diastolic. Then there's something called pre-hypertensive, which is not quite clinical hypertension, but still too high. And in the United States, pre-hypertension always turns into hypertension if you're doing the things that cause the pre-hypertension in the first place. So that would be from 120 to 140, or from 80 to 90 diastolic. So thank you very much. Boy, next week I'm going to talk about dark chocolate. Now I know how this works. Or maybe I should do a session on massage. See who you can bring in. Well, I won't push my luck. So we've got, once we get to hypertension at 140 and over 90, 140 over 100 hypertension, then they get very, very serious about putting you on blood pressure lowering medications. So why is high blood pressure a problem? Well, it's a problem because our arteries are not infallible. So if you imagine a balloon, and you take two balloons, and one of them, let's say like those balloons that circus performers use or clowns use to make little doggies and swords and things. You blow one of them up to, let's say, a normal level it's not incredibly tight, right? So it's pliable. It's got some give to it. You don't certain balloons, like you touch them, you feel like they're just about to break. You're almost nervous about it. But this balloon, this first one, is filled. It's squishy. You don't have any of those, do you?
What?
The long ones that you'd blow, like turn into animals. Yeah. No. I was just checking because I'm checking the limits of the House of Wonders here. But you can see, right? You could bend it. It's right, and then take another one and you blow it up as hard as you can, almost to the point where it's about to burst, but not quite. And which one of those balloons is going to fatigue faster? Obviously, the one that has the really high pressure in it. The walls are going to, they're under pressure, they're under a dynamic stress, and according to physics, they are going to fatigue faster than the one that is more pliable, that is not under so much stress. So your arteries can, and the blood vessels can become very, very sensitive. And when you have high blood pressure, we'll talk about causes in a little while, but just the effect of high blood pressure is damaging to the blood vessels in your body, to the arteries, to the blood vessels. And the place where the blood vessels are smallest and most sensitive and most vulnerable is where damage tends to occur. So, for example, one of the symptoms of high blood pressure is hypertensive retinopathy, because in the eyes can get damaged because the blood vessels there have too much pressure in them, and the blood actually sort of like leak out, and that can cause ruptures and can cause blindness. Another place is the kidneys. High blood pressure very often leads to kidney disease. So high blood pressure clearly is not a good thing. So that's where the medical profession comes in. It's really interesting working on this book, because I've immersed myself in the medical view of pharmacotherapy, of drugs. And so I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos to really, it's an easy way to sort of remember things. I'm not going to medical school or nursing school, so I don't need to know it perfectly, but just kind of get the basic ideas. And the way nurses talk to nurses and doctors talk to doctors, it's amazing how non-holistic it is. So when you talk about a class of drugs that treats hypertension, they talk in such limited terms. They don't talk about what caused the hypertension. They don't talk about why the hypertension is a physical response to something. And they don't talk about the fact that reducing hypertension by itself may not be addressing the real problem. So that's where I want to go right now. So the question is, why do our bodies become hypertensive? Why do we get high blood pressure? I mean, our bodies, so the medical view, which is implicit, is that our bodies are broken. That basically we're all given lemons at birth. That's how my lead author, Garth Davis, talks about it in Proteinaholic. He says he just assumed that, he was given a lemon for a body. Most people he knew had lemons for bodies. And lemon here doesn't mean a piece of citrus fruit. It means like, the bad car that you drive off the lot and never quite works right. That we're just, we're imperfect. That's just how things are. Things go wrong. And thank goodness we live in an era where we have these scientists creating drugs and pharmaceutical companies producing them, marketing them, refining them, testing them, so that we don't have to suffer from the ill effects of our body's betrayals of us. So the question, why do you have high blood pressure, doesn't even come up in these medical discussions. It's okay, so here's the symptom, high blood pressure. Here are the drugs we can use. Here are the indications. Here are the contraindications. Here are some of the interactions we want to avoid. And basically, they're talking about that whole thing in a vacuum. So let's look at high blood pressure. And to do so, let us imagine a city. I just had a vision now of like the Mr. Rogers music. We're going doodle 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 doodle, and now he walks over, and we're in the land of make believe. So we're in the land of make believe right now. Okay, and we're imagining a city. So I spent a lot of time as a kid in New York City, so that's the one's going through my head. Or you may have a different city, or you may just make one up. It could be the Emerald City. We're in the land of make believe. A lot of people in the city. In New York, 10 million people? All of them need food. All of them need to eat multiple times a day. And you know what? All of them produce waste. And for the purposes of this video, we'll just talk about like non-bodily waste, but just like wrapping paper and old newspapers and, food garbage, stuff that you'd put in a bag and put out on the curb or drive to the dump. So that one of the most important functions of any city government is to make sure that the food is delivered and the waste is removed. And by government, I don't just mean, the elected officials. These are the administration of the city. It could be in the private sector. So most food delivery is private sector with shipping companies, with distributors, with supermarkets, with delivery services, with restaurants. But it's a system, right? And the system has to work well. And if the city is New York and it's an island, then you need to take care of the bridges and all that. So there's our metaphor that we have. In order for the city to function, in order for it to live, we need to have extremely efficient, reliable delivery of food and removal of waste. So let's go back to the bodies and kind of ground the metaphor in the body. For your body to live, for it to function, it needs delivery of food to every single cell, from the tip of your nose to the tip of your little pinky toe, to the nail on the tip of your pinky toe, from the tip of the hair on your nose. So every cell of the body needs nutrients, and it needs them on a regular basis, not 3 times a day, but on a moment to moment basis, on a second by second, on a nanosecond by nanosecond basis. Our cells need to be bathed in nutrients. And the reason this is important is that each cell has an intelligence and takes care of itself. And if it needs a nutrient, it will pull it in, and if it doesn't, it will just let it go by. So it's like one of those sushi restaurants with the conveyor belt. If there's no food on the conveyor belt, that's bad. If there is food, you don't have to eat every single one. You can watch it go by, and when you want one, you take it. Well, that's how cells deal with nutrients, as long as they are packaged in a form that they can understand, in a human food form, which is to say, whole foods, mostly plants. So as long as it doesn't come to us hyper packaged or concentrated, then our cells can take what they need and let the rest go through. But it's important when the cell needs something that it's available. So the blood is the mechanism by which all these nutrients travel throughout the body and reach every single cell. So that's the food. The blood on the way back is also doing a job of picking up waste products. It's not the only system in the body that deals with waste products, but it is a principal one. And so the blood also picks up, if you've been exercising, it'll take out that lactic acid from your muscles. It'll take out other waste products. It'll take the spent fuel and bring it back, and it'll get processed by the kidneys, by the liver, by the lymph system, and then come back to the heart, where it gets re-oxygenated with the blood from the oxygen from your lungs. It gets refilled with nutrients from your digestive system, and it goes back around. Okay, let's go back to the city. If the roads are clear, let's say there's no cars are allowed to park on the road. There's just and there's no potholes, and the traffic lights are working, and it's well paved. Then you don't have a problem. Then the delivery trucks can go and deliver all the food everywhere it needs to be, and the garbage trucks can pick up all the garbage, and everything is cool. Okay, let's go back to the body. When we're born, most of us have beautiful circulatory systems. If you were to look at it through a microscope, it would be any cardiologist's dream. You'd see clear blood vessels, clear arteries. It's almost like, imagine sending a liquid through like a glass tube, a very, very pure, fine glass tube. No nicks or cuts, no bumps or abrasions, no crenellations or oscillations. It's just smooth flowing through those tubes. Well, that doesn't last for very long. There was a study that I just saw in preparation for this chapter. It says by 2 years of age, most American children have fatty streaks in their arteries. So the diet we are eating is dumping gunk into our arteries, and that gunk ends up going into our blood vessels. And the food we eat also damages the walls of the blood vessels. And the food we eat also makes us deficient in nitric oxide, which is a chemical that is released by the endothelium, the thinnest little layer of cells on the inside of the blood vessels that protects them. So we are causing damage by just gunking it up. We're causing damage by having particles. So imagine, let's say, the certain types of LDLs, the bad kind of cholesterol. Imagine them. Friend of mine, Joel Kahn, has a book, The Holistic Heart Book, and he talks about imagine like little golf balls, lots and lots of golf balls bouncing around. Like a golf ball could shatter a window. So certain types of cholesterol are very, very dense and sharp, and other types are much more sort of spongy and poofy that could just sort of bounce around and not cause any damage. The way we eat, oh my gosh. I mentioned chocolate, and here comes chocolate. This is amazing. Uh, wow. I'm not going to have any now because I don't want any. I don't want to be on. I don't want to be on tape eating dark chocolate. This is this is one of those things that I do in private when no one's looking, so I can just increase the shame.
I mean, this is good for me too.
Ah, so now I get to think about it. Now I get to practice self denial. Okay, good. Covering it up with tissues. So we're gunking up the arteries, which is to say, let's imagine. Well, I'll get back to the street in a second, but it gets gunked up with saturated fat from fatty animal products. It gets harmed by the cholesterol in animal foods, gets nicks and cuts, and also there's a lot. All this damage causes a lot of inflammation, and inflammation, as Joel Kahn reminds us, comes from the Latin to ignite, flame, inflammo. I ignite. So it's like little fires in the body, and that can cause the blood vessels to what's called vasoconstrict, which means they're just too tense. And you may have experienced this in any part of your body. You may just discover one day that you're worried about something and you realize you're like clenching a fist, right? When we get older, very often our posture degrades because of this sort of long-term trauma. If you're in like a low-grade sense of fear, right? If I come up behind you and I pop a balloon in your ear, you'll have a startle response, right? So it's called like turtling, where we want to protect our heads, our shoulders come forward, and it's sort of a chronic, an instant tension. But very often in our lives, we can have chronic tension and it'll sort of creep up. And if you work at an office and your boss is going to yell at you and you're worried about things and you don't get a chance to relax and breathe, and you don't do work on the muscles to understand, to notice the tension and then release it, the tension gradually builds and builds and builds to the point where it becomes chronic. We'll talk about that in detail in another show, but I want to use that as a metaphor to explain what can happen to your blood vessels, to your arteries. They can vasoconstrict to the point where they're tensed, and they never relax because of the damage, because of the insults and injuries caused by the food that we eat that makes it into our bloodstreams. Back to the city. So what would the equivalent of that be? So I'm still working on this metaphor for the book, but I'm thinking like, imagine that the food trucks are poorly designed and they're carrying bad food and like giant slabs of butter and meat are falling off the trucks and landing on the street. All right, so big oil spills too, like giant 55-gallon drums of olive oil and coconut oil and safflower oil and peanut oil. They're spilling, they're cracking, they're breaking up all over. So all of a sudden, the streets are a gross, gloopy mess. Now, I've never hydroplaned on pure oil, but I have seen sort of slick areas where there's oil on top of water. You know what happens when a vehicle is trying to move through a very sort of oily area and there's big lumps of beef and they're bouncing over it. They have to slow down, right? So now imagine in the city that the streets are now being filled with this sort of lumpy, oily masses, these tubs breaking apart. they're not going to be able to move as efficiently, as quickly as before. They're going to have to slow down. So now all of a sudden, all the food trucks are moving more slowly. And on the obverse side, it's the same streets. The garbage pickup trucks have to move just as slowly. And sometimes when they hit a bump, they'll spill more garbage. So now you have a situation where food isn't getting delivered on time and garbage isn't getting picked up on time. What do you do? Let's go back to the body. We have questions? No questions yet. Okay. Let's go back to the body. The heart beats to create blood pressure, right? We talked about systolic, the heart beating, diastolic, the heart relaxing. So when the heart beats, it's doing so, it doesn't just beat the same every day, right? The heart is not set it and forget it. You know, so if I were to stand up right now and pump my arms fairly fast 5 times like this, guess what? If we had that blood pressure monitor on me, my blood pressure would go up, right? So our blood pressure goes up in response to demand. If I have to run, then my muscles need more fuel. And so to get that fuel, the heart pumps faster and I breathe faster, because it doesn't do me any good for the heart to pump faster if I don't increase my oxygen, right? I need the oxygen in the blood to be just as high. So I will hyperventilate, over breathe. I'll speed up my breathing and my body does it all automatically. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to make a decision. When there is need, then the heart beats faster and the lungs speed up the breathing. Now I can sort of control my breathing. I could try to hold my breath. It's extremely unpleasant. If you've ever held your breath for a minute, just on a dare, or hold your nose and go underwater, you know that it can cause a huge panic reaction. And if someone wants to commit suicide by holding their breath, they will fail. The body will make you pass out so that it can resume normal breathing. But the heart, it responds to stimuli, it responds to need. So now let's go back to our city. And all of a sudden, the people aren't getting their food deliveries. So they go to the store and there's not enough food. It's like the shelves before, 2 inches of snow in Raleigh, right? The weatherman comes on and says, we're expecting a couple of inches. Everyone's going to run to the store and buy, milk and eggs, milk and bread. And you go there and there's like, everything's empty. There's like some shaving stuff left, a couple of batteries, all the, toilet paper and tampons are gone. There's like a broken, half-cracked bottle of water, but everything else is gone. Right.
Somebody asked, how do you make a milk sandwich?
So
milk and
bread,
eggs, milk, bread are gone.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a recipe, but I would avoid milk anyway. I'll teach you how to make an almond milk sandwich. So, right, what happens when food shortages happen, when people run out, when there's not enough, people get upset, they get angry. You know what happens when garbage isn't delivered? Now, I have been in New York when there were garbage strikes. Sanitation workers went on strike, and the garbage piled up 8 feet, 10 feet, and it started spilling out. They would, typically when they would put out the garbage, it'd be like 3 or 4 feet in width from like toward the building side, toward the street side. It starts clogging up the streets. It goes higher and higher. These bags fall down. The rodents get into them. They get very stinky. There are stories of people who were trying to get rid of their garbage in New York, and this was like in the 70s when crime was a big thing. They would take their garbage, they would buy gift wrapping, and they would put it in their garbage in boxes, gift wrap it, and leave it in their cars, and leave their cars unlocked in the hopes that somebody would steal their garbage, thinking that it was some sort of expensive present. So what happens is the people will complain. Right? If you live in New York now, you have the 311 system, right? You can call up, Bloomberg instituted that. I think it's still there with de Blasio. You can call 311 and say, hey, there's a pothole on the corner of Amsterdam and 64th Street. And hopefully someone from the city will come and they'll check it out. And if there's a pothole, they'll fix it. So there's, and all sorts of things. So people will complain, right? If people are going hungry If they're not getting enough food, if there's sort of a food insufficiency or a scarcity or insecurity, people will be vocal. And if the garbage isn't being picked up, people will be vocal. So all of a sudden, the mayor's phone is ringing off the hook, right? We're not getting our food. We're not getting our food. So the mayor's going to have to say, well, we better send out more trucks and tell them to go faster. Back to the body. The heart says, okay, well, we're not getting enough nutrients to the toes. The kidneys are complaining. The liver, we're getting all these calls. There's not enough potassium in the small intestines. What am I going to do? What can the heart do? The heart has one mechanism of action, which is to increase volume. It is going to pump more blood, and it's going to pump harder and faster. And that is what causes hypertension, high blood pressure. It's not some strange malady that just happens to fall from the sky. High blood pressure is the body's best way of defending itself, defending the circulatory system, defending the system of getting nutrients in and getting waste out of every cell in the body. So if you have a gunked up circulatory system, you will have hypertension. You will have high blood pressure because that's the only way that your body knows to keep itself healthy, to try to get the nutrients where they're supposed to go. So I really want you to stop and think about this, because soon we're going to talk about all these drugs. And in the book, the second half of each chapter is about all the drugs. And basically I'm saying that high blood pressure is a physical adaptation to a bad diet. Which means if you don't do anything about the diet and you just deal with the hypertension by just dealing with using drugs to lower the blood pressure, have you solved the problem? Let's go back to our city. So the first reaction is we'll send out bigger trucks, more trucks, put more stuff on the trucks, drive them faster. But what happens when you start driving the trucks faster? Right? They start getting into accidents. Now there's trucks blocking the road too. Right? So and now people are angry at each other. There's road rage. Things are much worse when you try to speed it up. Right? So if you have the high blood pressure, and if you have insufficiency of delivery and you speed things up, well, the high blood pressure is actually making it worse. It's the only means the heart has, but it doesn't mean high blood pressure is the solution or healthy, because all of a sudden now you've got trucks trying to get past, right? You ever see like a car trying to get past where they can't, right? There's that right exit lane, and the car's like, there's like 6 cars in front of them at the red light, and like, I can make a right on red here if I could just get there. And like, oh, I can almost do it. And they're inching along, and you're looking at them from behind, and you're going, wow, they're going to lose their rearview mirror, and they're going to really piss off the person on their left. They're going to scrape that person. They're going to go into a ditch on this side. It's just not going to work. Right? You've seen drivers like that. And like, but when the heart is pumping hard, it's the mayor saying, just drive faster, pedal to the metal, hit that accelerator, don't stop. We got to get these food delivered. You're going to have accidents. You're going to have trucks down. You're going to have crashing into road signs. You're going to have the asphalt is going to start getting messed up. The high blood pressure is making things worse. So let's go on record here as saying that I don't think that high blood pressure medicines are always a bad idea. Sometimes they are necessary in the short term. But as the solution, they are not a solution. But they're just, what they are is, let's go back to the city. The mayor finds out that there's all these accidents. There's like riots in the street. There's trucks down everywhere. And the mayor says, what's going on? Well, you know what? We have a mechanism to measure what we're calling high tension in the city. It's a lot of tension, right? And we're going to measure it in terms of noise. So honking, engines revving, people screaming at each other, people punching each other. This is all noise, right? So we can measure that. And let's say the measurement of noise is really good measure of the tension in the city. Just like systolic and diastolic is a really good measure of the tension in your blood. So we're going to measure the noise. And in fact, a lot of those noises actually contribute to the problem. If you're tense and you hear loud, obnoxious noises, that can make you more tense, right? Noise pollution is a real thing. So we've got noise, and the body wants, and so the mayor says, well, we've got to stop this noise. That's the problem here, is this tension in the city. And we can measure gunshots too, right? People getting hit with iron pipes, whatever makes noise. And the mayor's focusing on, well, if we stop the noise. So there's lots of ways to stop the noise. So one is every driver who comes to the central depot to pick up the food or to drop off the waste, they're given a beer, right? That'll calm them down, right? When you drink a beer, most people, one beer, it's a sedative, right? Maybe if it's Boulder, Colorado, the mayor gives them marijuana. It'll calm them down even more. But they go out mellow. They're now mellower. So they're sitting in the traffic jam, and they're less likely to hit the horn. They're less likely to pull out their piece and waste somebody. All right, so that's one way to do it. So the hypertensive drug that's basically like giving the driver a beer is beta blockers. Beta blockers, beta adrenergic blockers, block the receptors in the cardiac system that convert the catecholamines, the norepinephrine and epinephrine, and stop it from acting on the heart. So basically, these two, the norepinephrine and epinephrine, are the stress hormones. So if you need to be under stress, if you need to pick up a car from a small child or run away from a saber-toothed tiger or fight to the death, these are the chemicals that flood your body and increase the heart rate. So your heart can pump faster, so you can run, so you can do all your physical feats of strength and protect yourself and your family. Beta blockers are really good at blocking those reactions from the heart. So you can be under stress and not feel it. The stress hormones get released, but they don't act on the heart muscle and they don't act in certain other systems. So that's kind of cool. And by the way, according to one of my podcast guests, I have a weekly podcast, the Plant Yourself podcast, which you can find at plantyourself.com. Dr. Henry Weisinger, who's one of my guests, who's an expert on stress and pressure, says that in his experience and his research, many professional musicians are addicted to beta blockers because the act of performing live is so stressful that the only way they can do it is by chugging these things like M&Ms. So that's beta blockers. So other ways of reducing the noise are, well, let's make the streets bigger. Well, that's hard to do. We can tear down some buildings and make the streets bigger. We can also make the trucks smaller. Right? So now instead of trucks, we're going to deliver all the food and we're going to pick up the garbage in smart cars or ELFs. If you live in Durham, you can find an ELF at organictransit.com. There's a little bicycle solar car, very, very cool. Imagine if we're trying to do a delivery system with smaller vehicles. Now, all of a sudden, instead of the big 18-wheeler delivering all the food, you can only deliver little bits. So we're having the same problem. People are going to be sort of less violent in an ELF or a smart car, but we haven't solved the problem of the delivery. In fact, we've made it worse. We've made it much worse because now we're delivering and picking up much smaller volumes of stuff. So the problem we had in the first place is now compounded by the fact that all we're doing is we're focusing on reducing the noise. Now, if there's a riot, I think it's a really good idea to reduce the noise. I think it's a good idea to send in the National Guard to calm everything down, to take away, to lower the violence, to take away the weapons, to turn off the trucks. If we're in the middle of full-scale civil unrest, then those measures make sense. A curfew, okay, everybody stay in, everybody calm down, everybody cool down overnight. Those things make sense in cases of civic unrest. And those drugs make sense in the case of severe hypertension that's life-threatening. But they're not solving the problem. They're not getting the nutrients where they need to go, and they're not causing the body to pick up the waste products in an efficient fashion. And that's why when you look at how well do the antihypertensive medications work. They are really good at lowering blood pressure. Phenomenal. And there's so many different classes of them. There's the ACE inhibitors that I haven't talked about. There's the beta blockers. There's calcium channel blockers. There's diuretics. There's blood thinners. There's many different classes of each of these, and there's other kinds. They're very good at lowering blood pressure. So we know that. We know Western medicine is very good at dealing with the symptom that we name the disease for. Right? Just like last week, we talked about diabetes as a disease of high blood sugar. We're very good at lowering blood sugar. We're not very good. We have no medical tools to reverse it, to deal with the root cause. And here, we're ignoring the root cause and we're dealing with the symptom. And again, we're very good at reducing the symptom, but in fact, the difference in bad events, in outcomes, in clinical outcomes, in heart attacks, strokes, in mortality and death is very, very small. Again, in cases it can help. And there have been trials. There was a SPRINT trial that was published recently that showed that people with older people with lots of hypertensive risk factors and very high blood pressure actually lived a little bit longer or had fewer heart attacks and strokes and deaths when you aggressively lowered their blood pressure, not just down to 140, but down to 120, all the way down. They did a little bit better. But when you look at the numbers, when you look at how well they actually did, it's a very small improvement. It was a couple percentage points. That means for every 100 people who get put on this very intensive blood pressure lowering regimen, 2 of them will benefit. 1 out of 50 will benefit. The other 98 out of 100 will not benefit, but all of them will experience side effects. And in this case, the extreme lowering of blood pressure causes a lot of side effects, and they're not very pleasant. So what can we do about this? So again, if you're on meds and you want to save money, I'm going to suggest that you turn your lifestyle around so that you remove the problem. So imagine the enlightened mayor sees all this going on and says, okay, well, we got to calm everything down. So we're gonna do some low dose ACE inhibitors for a little while. If the heart is really running crazy and it's gone into tachycardia, it's right. We have electrical issues. We might want to deal with those and put in a beta blocker and slow things down a little bit. But once we've calmed down the civic unrest, we've got to solve the food delivery problem. So we've got to build better trucks and we've got to put healthier food on them. So we have to solve the problem so that the streets can become clear again. We've got to solve the problem, the original problem. Medicine doesn't see the lack of nutrients to the body as the original problem. They see the high blood pressure as the original problem. But we've seen the high blood pressure is not the problem. It is the body's best attempt to solve the problem. So I'm going to pause there for a second, find out if anyone has questions. No. I see there's people. No? Oh, they're just chatting to each other? Oh, okay. Oh, cool. Well, say hello for me. So that is what I have to say about hypertension. I feel like Forrest Gump there. And that's all I have to say about hypertension. I have a lot more that I could say about hypertension. But you know what? You're not going to hear this from doctors because hypertensive medication is too big business. The pharmaceutical companies make too much money on this. Oh, I will talk about one more thing. So there are. I'm going to go to my notes here, because as I said, I've been head down writing. So if I have to lose eye contact with you, good people, for a moment, please forgive me. So some of the research points to obviously the plant-based diet, a whole food plant-based diet, which also works on all those other conditions: cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, gout, gastrointestinal problems, cancer, infections, allergies, asthma, headaches, etc. So what does that involve? Mostly whole foods of plant origin. Question about palm oil. Let me finish my sentence and I will get to it. Actually, I will answer it right here. Mostly whole foods of plant origin, whole grains, raw and cooked fruits and vegetables, legumes, small amounts of nuts and seeds. And then significantly reduce or eliminate highly processed foods and animal foods. So palm oil is a highly processed food. All
Hello,
oils.
dear doctor.
Oh, hello.
Can I ask a question?
Yes. How are you?
Thank you. I'm fine. Recently, I watched a documentary film which shows that palm oil is safe as olive oil, and they encouraged people to
Mhm,
use palm oil. But
mhm,
there was recent ongoing conflict in my country, which government forced to ban the using of palm oil in the foods.
mhm.
What's your answer for this? Is
Okay.
palm oil really safe, or the documentary which I saw was a advertisement
Hmm.
or something like that?
Good. Right. So, well, what you said was that it was as safe as olive oil, which is possibly true, but is not very safe. So, large amounts of any oil are problematic for a whole bunch of reasons. One is that processed oils have a
Saturated acid.
very high omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, and it ideally it's in a human body it's around 1 to 1, and in the Western diet it's around 15 to 1. So processed oils contribute to that. When you cook many processed oils above a certain point, they can produce glycogen like products that and I'm blanking on the term right now. Um, it's when they're cooked at high temperature, something happens to them that can actually cyclamates that can actually make them carcinogenic and cause cancer. Now, there may be two reasons that palm oil can be banned. The government might want to ban it. One is it's a very heavily saturated fat. Um, and the second reason is that in areas where it grows, palm oil um, deforestation is causing extinction of bonobos and other animals that live in these rainforest regions. So the palm nuts or coconuts or whatever kind of palm it is, if you eat the whole fruit, if you ever eat a coconut, it takes a lot of energy. You gotta, find a big rock or a hammer or something. Then you have to sort of chisel it out. You can drink the water. But if you just take it and turn it into oil, it's highly concentrated. So I don't know the statistics for palm oil, but if you look at say olive oil, it takes about 42 olives to make 1 tablespoon of olive oil. And so, but it's very easy to put a quarter cup or a half of a cup of olive oil into a recipe, and for 4 people, and everybody's consuming 3 or 4 or 5 tablespoons of olive oil. So oils are really highly processed. So I don't think anybody thinks that sugar is a healthy food, right? We know fruit is healthy, but refined sugar that comes from fruit, where all the water's been stripped out, all the fiber, all the nutrients, and it's been chemically processed, and we have this highly refined white crystalline powder. Oil is the equivalent of that from vegetable fats. So if you eat, let's say broccoli is 10% fat. We don't think of broccoli as having fat in it, but if you could make broccoli oil, right? You could just like we make corn oil, right? You could eat corn on the cob. It's not very fat, but there's enough in there that if you take enough of it and you concentrate it, you can get oil. We could make broccoli oil, I suppose. But that doesn't mean that oil is a health food. So rather than discussing the various merits of different oils, of olive oil versus palm oil versus canola versus coconut oil, I would say the healthy diet avoids oil. Now, I do like palm oil in my soap. Right? Palm olive is a very good use of two oils, palm and olive oil. So they're very good on the skin as unguents, but I would not take them internally. All right. Well, so looks like we're out of time for this episode. So if folks have questions, about specific foods, which I didn't get to. I will say whole grains seem to be very protective. What is it? I can keep going? Okay. You're so nice. You give me water, you give me chocolate, you let me talk too long. I'm doing this whole transference thing on you. So whole grains. Ooh, my voice changed. That's how excited I got talking about whole grains. I need more water. I'm good. So, stay. Whole grains have been found to be protective, and I'll just say one word in answer to the question. I guess the person was dropped off. But if you're still listening, he's not. Well, if you watch this later, or anyone else who cares, it's devilishly hard to do research on a single food, to say, okay, this food is helpful, this food is harmful. It's too hard to do the research, and if you think about how we would test it, it's very, very difficult and generally impossible to say, okay, this food here, we're going to take a million people and give it to them, and this group is not going to get it. But even so, and I think I'll talk about this next week as the main topic. So remind me I'll write it down afterwards. Is how do we do scientific research on food? And so I'll leave that hanging. But whole grains appear to be very protective. Flaxseed. So here's a study that I read about in Michael Greger's new book, How Not to Die. There's a couple books with that name, but Michael Greger just released it in December of 2015. It is a fantastic book. I recommend that you get it and get one for everyone you know. It is hilarious. It's very well written, great metaphors, very easy to understand, and nutritional prescriptions for the top what he calls serial killers, the top killer diseases in the United States and around the world. So this study comes from well, I learned about it from that book. It took about 100 people with hypertension and divided them into two groups. And one group got flax seeds ground up in muffins, and the other group got muffins without flax seeds. And the nice thing about this kind of research, it's very, if you want to do scientific research, you have to blind people so they don't know what they're getting. If you give someone a pill and they get better, maybe they got better because of the pill, maybe they got better because they thought they should get better because of the pill, because of placebo. So it's very hard to give people placebo foods, right? Imagine a placebo banana. No, what is it? Is it air in a banana shape? Is it not a banana that's made to look like a banana? So they were able to have these two muffins, but one of them had the flax seeds and the other didn't, but people didn't know. It was created in such a way that you couldn't really taste the difference. It had other stuff in it that mimicked the taste, texture, color, consistency of flax seeds. So let's see. So we had the double blind, and so by the end of 6 months, the flaxseed group had lowered their blood pressure an average of 10/7. That is to say 10 points systolic, 7 points diastolic. So what does this mean? So we go back to the literature and we look at, well, what does that kind of lowering of blood pressure in hypertensive people mean for their outcomes? And so the study authors wrote, and I quote, a reduction of 7 millimeters of mercury in diastolic blood pressure would be expected to result in a 46% decrease in stroke and a 29% decrease in coronary heart disease. So 46% less stroke, 29% less heart disease, just from adding 30 grams of flax a day. 30 grams is about an ounce. An ounce of flax meal a day lowered the risk hugely by lowering people's blood pressure significantly. This is as good as any drug. And it has many other health benefits, including improving your omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, and lots of other good stuff. Another great antihypertensive food is hibiscus tea. One study, 2 cups of hibiscus tea in the morning lowered blood pressure by the same amount as a twice daily 25 milligram dose of captopril, which is, I think, one of the ACE inhibitors. And this is also from How Not to Die. Dr. Greger recommends don't overdose. Don't have more than a quart a day because hibiscus tea has an acid in it that can actually rot out your teeth enamel if you have it in guzzling quantity. So again, more is not always better. So just because 2 cups of hibiscus tea can lower your blood pressure as much as one of the most effective drugs, doesn't mean you need to go to 10 cups. Also, the third category I'll talk about are high nitrate foods, natural nitrates. I'm not talking about like sodium nitrate and nitrites in preserved meat, but foods that have lots of nitrogen in them, including leafy greens and beets. Beets are amazing. On January 16th, we're gonna have a whole section at the cooking class on beets, on how to prepare them deliciously and easily, and how good they are for you. Do you know that there are athletes who dope on beets? They will drink beet juice like half an hour before an event because remember I talked about the nitric oxide that's produced by the endothelial cells that causes natural vasodilation and protects the cells. So it can actually, people take nitric oxide, not nitrous oxide, laughing gas, but nitric oxide to enhance performance, to improve the absorption of nutrients from the blood, and beets are one of the top foods for that. So again, January 16th, if you go to trianglebewell.com/events and look for the January 16th Eat Healthy for the New Year event, if you live anywhere near North Carolina, you should check that out. It's 2 hours. I think it's $45, and you get fed.
They produce sugar from beets too, right? Or
They
is that
do.
different beets?
No, beets are certain types of beets are used to produce beet sugar.
No.
When they had trouble with slave revolts and cane sugar, they found other ways, and I think they can make sugar from lots of different crops. But again, it's a great reminder that the whole food is healthy, and when you fragment it and you take out the good stuff and you just leave in the highly palatable refined foods without the nutrients and the fiber and the water, then you're creating toxins. All right, I am out of water. I am out of words. I'm not out of love. I hope all of you who are watching this find it useful and valuable. I hope it will improve your life. If you want to find out more, if you want to consult with me privately or work with me to improve your lifestyle or diet or health, you can reach me at trianglebewell.com. There's a contact box there. I also have a podcast, a weekly show, comes out every Tuesday, except when it doesn't, called Plant Yourself. You can find that at plantyourself.com, and you can subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher and hopefully a bunch of others real soon. Amnon, thank you again for your hospitality.
Thank you, Howard.
For the toys and the tools and the food and the water, and for all of you out there, take it easy. There's also, I didn't talk about all the emotional ways you can lower your blood pressure through meditation, relaxation, yoga, smiling, thinking happy thoughts, but those are all good as well. Even if they didn't lower your blood pressure, they would still be good things to do. So everybody out there, until next week, be well, my friends.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, My Life, My Will with Gisela DiCarlo, The Tanya Love Show, Health Then with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Triangle Be Well with Howard Jacobson, Lunch and Learn with Rabbi Yisrael Cutler, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, Parent Dome with Ryan Miller, Current Affairs with Amnon Nissan. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section on nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Atomos.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.